Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to Assembly Judiciary on this magnificent Friday, closing out our first week here in session. With that, I will ask Mr. Klatt to please take the roll.
Assemblywoman Bilbray Axelrod.
Here.
Assemblywoman Cohen.
Here.
Assemblywoman Considine.
Present.
Assemblywoman Gallant.
Present.
Assemblyman Gray.
Here.
Assemblywoman Hanson.
Here.
Assemblywoman Hardy.
Here.
Assemblywoman LaRue Hatch.
Here.
Assemblywoman Marzola.
Here.
Assemblywoman Mosca.
Here.
Assemblywoman Newby.
Here.
Assemblyman Ortlicker.
Here.
Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong. Assemblyman Urick.
Here.
Chair Miller.
Here. And please mark those that are not present when they arrive. I'd like to welcome everyone to Judiciary, and those who we do have video conferencing with Grant Sawyer today, and of course everyone that's here in Carson City with us. Today we do have two presentations. They will be from the Nevada Gaming Control Board and the Department of Corrections. First, just a few items of housekeeping. Again, asking that everyone turns off their phones and tablets and anything that makes noise, including our laptops up here. Please recognize that members will be using their laptops and for a reason. I'm just looking at the previous chair lurking in the window, that's all. So if we all just want to look at them. And so, again, everyone is researching and utilizing their computers for information. With that, I do need to make an announcement for how we will move forward accepting our exhibits. It's very challenging for us to, when we receive exhibits that have graphics and logos and all of those things on it because of trademark issues. And so going forward, because the goal is for us to be able to have those exhibits posted on Nellis so that the community can see it, as well as so that it's there for future use for members and, again, everyone in the public, because most of you, just like us, use Nellis as if it's just like, you know, the number one source, right? And so even to go back into previous sessions to be able to access that information. So going forward, I know we all love to put in amazing graphics and pictures and photos and all kinds of nice things to make everything real nice and lovely looking. But I feel like I'm your professor reminding you that we don't need a $10 cover and package to put your paper in. We just need a staple in the corner. So going forward, beginning with Tuesday, all of the graphics or anything for your PowerPoints, any exhibits that you're submitting, we're asking that you just submit text only. No logos, no pictures, anything like that. So for many of you, because I know that people, and I'm saying many of you, I'm speaking to those who are not in this room presently but are listening, we have been using the same PowerPoint session after session and so on, and so it may just be a point of deleting things. We do appreciate and desire knowing that a lot of times for exhibits, it's about the data. And so those graphs and those charts are vitally important to disseminate that data. With that, if it is a self-created within that software, where it's just that software's original charts and graphs that you're using, that is acceptable. But we get into too many issues with trademarks, and even yesterday, you might have saw a little commotion up here. It's because we were not able to access the actual exhibits that had been presented. So going forward, please just submit PowerPoints and exhibits that are just text only. And of course, please be mindful that it's really important that when the cutoff for 12 p.m., the day before, that we definitely need to make that cutoff. With that, I think that's the end of our housekeeping issues. I will move on to our first item on our agenda, which is our presentation. Again, for everyone listening, we will have a public comment section at the end of today's meeting. Again, our first presentation today is the Nevada Gaming Control Board. We have Chairman Hendrick, Member Assad, Member Watkins, and Senior Policy Counsel Michael Morton, that I think a few people in this room also know. So please approach, and when you are ready, please proceed.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair Miller, Vice Chair Marzola, members of the Assembly Committee on Judiciary. For the record, my name is Kirk Hendrick, and I'm the chairman of the Nevada Game Control Board since last Monday. Joining me today are board members Brittany Watkins on my right and Judge George Assad on my left, as well as you mentioned, Board Senior Policy Counsel Mr. Mike Morton is with us also today. I believe also watching on the video conferencing down in Las Vegas and some of the other here in Carson City is chiefs and employees of the Gaming Control Board that if we have any questions that we can't answer, hopefully they can help us with those. It is an honor to appear before all of you today and to present an overview of what the Gaming Control Board is for the state. You should all have a copy in front of you that the Gaming Control Board produces on a quarterly basis, an information packet for both the public and the industry. Nevada's gaming regulatory framework has a long and distinguished history that has rightfully earned a respected reputation around the world for effective regulation of legalized gaming. Such a reputation is a result of decades of work by every branch of the state's government, along with dedicated employees, industry leaders, and members of academia, who have all guided and protected this important and vital industry in our state. The Gaming Control Board's reputation is rooted in the philosophy that gaming, when properly regulated, can thrive and be an important contributor to the economy and the welfare of Nevada. It is also built on the standards of consistent, legal, ethical, and fair-minded practices and actions necessary for high standards in licensing, suitability, and operation. Nevada's gaming industry is governed and guided by a two-tier oversight system. The Gaming Control Board, the members you see in front of you here today, along with employees of approximately 400 full-time employees devoted and dedicated to this state, are divided into 6 divisions located in 5 cities throughout the state that act as Nevada's round-the-clock gaming regulators. The Nevada Gaming Commission is comprised of 5 commissioners who serve part-time. Those commissioners are currently chaired by the Honorable Jennifer Tagliati, and the other commissioners are Commissioner Rosa Salas-Rainey, Commissioner Stephen Cohen, Commissioner Ogana Brown, and Commissioner Brian Krolicki. The Commission is the final decision-making body on licensing and approval matters, NGC regulations, and it serves in a quasi-judicial role on any disciplinary matters that are brought forth by the Gaming Control Board. A brief history of gaming regulation in Nevada can be found on pages 6 through 8 of the packet you have in front of you. And on page 9, you can see a visual depiction of the organizational structure of gaming regulation in Nevada. A third body in the gaming regulatory framework in our state is the Gaming Policy Committee. It consists of 12 members that meet on the call of the governor, who is the chair of the committee, and they discuss matters of gaming policy. It's comprised of 1 member of the Senate, 1 member of the Assembly, chairs of both the Gaming Control Board and the Gaming Commission, and a representative from a Native American tribe, along with 6 other members appointed by the governor who represent the general public, the industry, and academia. The committee's recommendations governing gaming policy are advisory in nature, but they provide an ideal forum to discuss gaming policy in the state. As previously mentioned, the board has 6 divisions: administration, audit, enforcement, investigations, tax and license, and technology, with offices located in Carson City, Reno, Elko, Laughlin, and 2 locations in Las Vegas. Currently, each of the 3 board members has administrative oversight for 2 divisions, and with the chair's permission, we will each briefly explain about the divisions that we currently oversee. I apologize in advance that our presentation might be a little disjointed in the fact that the presentation you have in front of you, the packet lays out the divisions according to alphabetical order, but that's not how we divided up the divisions, so we will try to pass around the microphone duties as smoothly as possible this morning. The first division, which I oversee, is the administrative division, and it can be found beginning on page 10 in the packet. The admin division supports all of the operating divisions of the board, including training, facilities, management, contract, purchasing, accounting, budget, record retention, and other related services. Additionally, the board's internal affairs and administrative hearings offices are housed within the administrative division. The economic research section is also within this division, and it's responsible for forecasting gaming, tax, and fee revenues. Those forecasts are presented to the state's economic forum as part of the general fund revenue projection process. The administration division also provides policy research to the board, the legislature, and the governor's office. The administration division consists of approximately 30 employees. With the chair's permission, I will now turn the presentation over to member Brittany Watkins, who will provide an overview of the board's audit division.
Brittany Watkins, for the record. Good morning, Chair Miller, Vice Chair Marzola, and members of the committee. An overview of the audit division can be found on page 12 of the board information packet. The audit division primarily audits Group 1 casinos throughout the state. The definition of a Group 1 casino is based upon a gross gaming revenue threshold, adjusted annually in accordance with the Consumer Price Index. Group 1 licensees are those that currently gross over $7.391 million annually. The audit division operates on a 2.5 to 3 year audit cycle for Group 1 licensees. The primary objectives of a board audit are to determine the proper reporting of gaming and live entertainment revenue, and if the casino is compliant with all applicable gaming and live entertainment laws and regulations. Additionally, the audit division periodically performs cash counts to ensure that a casino is carrying sufficient funds. It analyzes an annual financial statements to monitor a licensee's continuing financial viability, prepares reports for the board, summarizing the key details of certain transactions such as loans and leases, and monitors the performance of all casino games in the state. The chief of the audit division is Thomasina Fremont, leading 84 employees, and she is present in the Grant Sawyer building in Las Vegas as well for questions. Approximately 50% of the audit division's professional staff are either certified public accountants or have passed the CPA exam and are in the process of obtaining their license. Member Assad will now present the operations of the Enforcement Division.
Thank you. Thank you, Member Watkins. Chairman Miller, Vice Chairman Marzola, and members of the committee, it's an honor and a privilege to be here. My name is George Assad, for the record. A description of the Enforcement Division begins on page 15 of your packet. The Enforcement Division operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and is responsible for conducting criminal and regulatory investigations, ranging from simple regulatory violations to detailed, complex, multi-jurisdictional task forces in conjunction with the FBI and the IRS. The Enforcement Division also investigates and arbitrates disputes between patrons and licensees. The division is also responsible for processing and conducting background investigations and registering all gaming employees who work in the state of Nevada. Chief Christy Torgerson leads the Enforcement Division, which currently has approximately 91 sworn peace officers and 29 clerical staff located in all 5 offices located throughout the state of Nevada. Each peace officer has a college degree or a combination of education and investigative experience coming from diverse backgrounds, including law enforcement, gaming, accounting, and computer sciences. Agents of the board's Enforcement Division, they are post-certified, they carry firearms, they are required to complete a gaming academy and field training program, and they are able to conduct covert investigations into criminal activities into the gaming field. The Enforcement Division also makes recommendations to the Gaming Control Board regarding potential candidates for inclusion in the list of excluded persons, also known as the Black Book. Lastly, the Enforcement Division also inspects and approves new games, chips, and tokens. An overview of the Investigations Division begins on page 17. A strong investigations division is imperative to ensuring that Nevada continues to be the international leader in gaming regulation, the so-called gold standard. A gaming license is a privileged license, and the Investigations Division is charged with investigating all individuals and corporate entities seeking a license, a registration, a finding of suitability, or other types of approval. An applicant for any type of gaming license or approval is subject to extensive investigation of his or her personal background and financial activity to verify suitability. Agents of the Investigations Division further investigate and analyze the activities of all privately held businesses, entities seeking a gaming license or registration in this state. These agents produce detailed reports used by the board and the commission as a basis for licensing and approval recommendations. The Investigations Division also registers and investigates individuals who bring patrons to Nevada through junket programs and receives and monitors all semi-annual reports on key employees submitted by non-restricted gaming licensees. The Investigations Division is led by Chief Carl Hoffman, who manages a team of 85 agents and support staff. Each agent in the Investigations Division has a college degree in a business, finance, criminal justice, or has extensive law enforcement experience. The Investigations Division is home to various sections and offices, including the Applicant Services Section and the Agency Liaison Office. The Applicant Services Section provides and receives all licensing applications to ensure each application is properly completed and required application fees are collected. The Agency Liaison Office responds to requests for information from governmental agencies around the world. The Corporate Security Section is also housed within the Investigations Division. This section monitors, investigates, and analyzes activities of registered, publicly traded corporations and their subsidiaries involved in Nevada's gaming industry. Any licensee who is traded on a public exchange, whether in the United States, Japan, or the UK, for example, is subject to a review by the Corporate Security Section. Additionally, this section reviews, evaluates, and audits licensees' compliance plans, monitors the activities of licensed publicly traded corporations, handles special projects including debt analysis, litigation review, and financial liability, and monitors foreign gaming reporting, which include required notices to the Board of Activities that arise in other jurisdictions in the United States and around the world. I will now return the presentation to Member Watkins.
Yes, thank you, Member Assad. Brittany Watkins, again for the record. The overview of the Tax and License Division begins on page 20 of the Board Information Packet. The Tax and License Division oversees Group 2 licensees, which are those licensees with annual gross revenue of under $7.391 million. This division operates on a 2 to 2.5 year audit cycle. It's led by Chief Chan Langzavath, who oversees approximately 24 employees. He is also present in Las Vegas in the Grant Sawyer building. This division is comprised of 3 sections: collections, compliance, and licensing. The collections section gathers deposits and distributes gaming taxes, fees, penalties, interest, and fines to the general fund. The compliance section performs reviews on Group 2 licensees throughout the state and conducts reviews of manufacturers, distributors, slot route operators, operators of inter-casino link systems, and mobile gaming operators. This section also completes reviews of restricted locations that report live entertainment revenue. The licensing section issues all gaming licenses approved by the Commission. Additionally, this section is tasked with maintaining the license database, including owners, key employees, and any license conditions. The Tax and License Division employs various means in gathering audit evidence. Covert or surprise observations of casino procedures are routinely conducted on an interim basis throughout an audit period. And interviews with casino personnel are periodically performed to ensure a licensee is complying with documented internal accounting controls. Chairman Hendrick will now complete the board's overview of the committee.
Thank you, Member Watkins. Again, for the record, Kirk Hendrick. You can find information about the board's technology division on page 22 of your packet. The technology division is the primary point of contact at the board for new gaming innovation. This division is led by Chief Jim Barbie, who I believe is also on the teleconferencing equipment. Managing 26 board members, Chief Barbie and his department have a fundamental role of technology division in the review of all technology that is directly related in conducting of gaming activities by Nevada's licensees. The division reviews and makes recommendations to the board and commission for approximately 2,000 new and modified gaming devices and associated equipment each year. The technology division also assists innovators in the technology industry with how the board and commission's regulatory and technical requirements apply to their products. Staff in the technology division also support the enforcement division by assisting in investigations of patron disputes and complaints related to gaming technology and criminal investigations. Additionally, the technology division provides support to the investigations division during licensing process, data acquisition, and analysis services. And the technology division also houses the board's information technology department and employees. Lastly, I would like to provide the committee with some licensee and tax collection information beginning on page 24 of your packet. You can find certain data and information that is collected and produced by the board. At the close of fiscal year 2022, there were 2,963 gaming licensees in Nevada. Included in that number, approximately 500 non-restricted licensees. A non-restricted licensee is one that is typically granted to an operation of either a property having 16 or more slot machines, a property having any number of slot machines together with any other live gaming device, racebook, or sports pool, or a slot machine route operator. There are currently 2,036 restricted licensees at the end of that fiscal year. A restricted licensee is one that operates 15 or fewer slot machines at establishments such as taverns, grocery, convenience, and drugstores. As of June 30th, 2022, there were 127,558 slot machines available for play at non-restricted locations, and 19,210 available at restricted locations. Additionally, there were 5,437 table, card, and counter games available throughout the state. For fiscal year 2022, statewide gaming win for non-restricted licensees totaled $14,629,980,000. Of that, approximately $4.6 billion, $9.8 billion was derived from slot machines, while $4.8 billion came from table, card, and counter games. The gaming industry is undoubtedly a vital and substantial part of Nevada's revenue. The board and commission act as the taxing authority on behalf of the state for the gaming industry. Generally, the largest share of gaming taxes is generated from a tax on gaming revenue, or house win, as it's called, in addition to other fees and taxes associated with the gaming equipment placement and live entertainment. Pursuant to NRS 463.370, taxes on gross gaming revenue are applied monthly under the following graduated rate schedule: 3.5% of the first $50,000, plus 4.5% of the next $84,000, plus 6.75% of any gross gaming revenue exceeding $134,000. The board and commission are very proud of the culture of compliance both entities have cultivated throughout the decades of regulated gaming in Nevada. For fiscal year 2022, the board collected nearly $1.2 billion in taxes, fees, and penalties, and only experienced $1,035 in uncollected revenue. That's resulting in a over 99.99% collection rate. Very impressive, and although a lofty goal, it's one that the board routinely achieves. Chair Miller, we appreciate you allowing us to present the Gaming Control Board this morning. Members of the committee, we thank you, and that concludes the board's presentation. Of course, we would be happy to answer any questions that any of you may have for us this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Right now, we do have a question from Assemblywoman Newby.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's page 29, the selected data and information gaming licenses. I'm curious, looking at these numbers for the non-restricted Group 1 and Group 2, I would imagine that the Group 1 being over the 7,319,000, whatever it is, are some of the larger properties. But can you give some examples of what kind of characteristics typically separate a Group 1 versus a Group 2? So, for example, when I go to PT's pub and there's slots, a lot of them, in the bar, would an establishment like that be in Group 1 because of their revenue, or would that typically be a Group 2?
So Group 1 licensees are those who are grossing over 7.391 million with 16 slot machines or more.
Thank you. Next question from Assemblywoman Mosca.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for this very helpful information. My question actually continues on my colleague's question. Thank you so much. Is there a public list of all of the licensees somewhere? And what is the approximate amount of people who apply but are not approved when it comes to licenses?
Through the chair to Assemblywoman Mosca.
May go direct.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Chair Miller. I would ask if Mr. Morton has that information. As far as the percentage that aren't approved, I don't know if that's currently tracked. As far as a list, is that in our publications, Mr. Morton?
Mr. Morton, if you would like to approach, this way we can get you on the record.
Mike Morton for the record. The list of licensees are public information, and there's different types of lists of licensees that can be found either on the board's website or through asking the board for that information.
But that's correct, yes, it is all public. I just didn't know if it was all in one spot. Thank you.
Thank you. Assemblywoman Hanson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning. Thank you for being here. First of all, I love Nevada history, and I can tell you that I think all of us have a great appreciation for what the Gaming Control Board does, because we know there was kind of a nefarious history involved in gaming in the past. So appreciate greatly that we have cleaned it up and seems to be really above board, and that's a big job, so it's appreciated. I was trying to look which slide, but restricted people, or the famous black book, how, if you could just, for our edification, what puts a person in that position that they would be considered a restricted person?
Thank you, Assemblywoman Hanson, for the question. Yes, that is part of the lore of Nevada gaming history as well, the infamous Nevada Black Book. What happens on that, and this is provided in statute, there's certain criteria that make someone eligible. It's a little bit flexible in the sense that you just don't know, but one of the primarily things that would be important is, have they cheated in a gaming establishment? Are they known to be someone who enters a gaming establishment and tries to cheat the system? Also, historically, it's been someone who has had ties to mafia, the mob, and that's where it came from, as you mentioned, through the history many decades ago. You also have people that are just constantly trying to get around the system and using gaming industry to do it. So what happens is, through the Attorney General's office, the Gaming Control Board looks at someone and says, should we keep this person out of all licensed establishments? And then the Gaming Commission has to make the final authority on that.
Thank you. I have a follow-up to that. So how many members or organizations are in that black book right now?
Thank you, Chair. It's only people, and I don't know the number off the top of my head. I think it's about 20, but don't quote me on that. You have your computers in front of you. Luckily, you can see the Nevada Black Book now. It's not just an actual book. It is on our website. So if you go to our public website, I think right now it's under a button of enforcement. The people who are in Nevada's Black Book are actually their photos, and their name is listed right there. So I don't have the number for you, unfortunately, but you can see their pictures and what they've done to provide themselves the chance to not be involved in our gaming industry.
And is this a lifetime sentence?
That's correct, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Next question from Assemblyman Orlicker.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I'm curious about the technology review. So I would assume a lot of it is to make sure it's a fair game, that it pays off properly, and all that. Are there other things that you look at when you're doing your review of new technology?
Thank you, Assemblyman Orlicker. Orant Liquor, sorry if I mispronounced your name. Yes, you're correct. The primary things we're looking for is to be sure it's a fair game for the patron. We want people to know that when they come to Nevada and the gaming industry is very fair to them, and that whatever the game says it's going to do, it actually does. So that's primary. Another primary focus of any review is that it properly accounts for taxes. We need to know how much money in and money out, because that's what we base the taxes on, is the gross gaming revenue for non-restricted licensees. Other things that'll be looked into is whether or not the software is up to date. Is it staying so that it doesn't just break down, so that it can do our first two objectives, being sure that the patron is getting a fair game and that we're properly collecting taxes. So it's like any review that you would have of software and hardware. You're constantly needing to check upon that, and the manufacturers are constantly bringing new innovative technology. So it's now getting into a lot of graphics and consumer play, bonus type features. All of those have to be checked so that they're properly being operated for the patron. Thank you.
Thank you. Assemblywoman Bilbray Axelrod.
Thank you, Chair. So, funnily enough, I was actually going to ask a question about the difference with the 1 and 2, and then my colleague asked and said specifically PTs. I was under the assumption, and I think where the confusion lies is I think we had this idea that the one were casinos, we see table games, but because of that 15 or less, there are many taverns, especially down in Las Vegas, who are in that one category. Is that correct? So, like PTs, I believe, and I'm not calling out PTs, I'm just calling out the fact that they're everywhere and they're large. How many tavern establishments are included in this number? Are we able to?
Thank you, Assemblywoman. So I'll back up a little bit. Non-restricted Category 1, as we mentioned, is over a certain amount of, it's approximately $7.3 million in gross gaming revenue. The Class 2 would be below that amount. Non-restricted is separate. So non-restricted, again, taking an example of PTs, if there is 15 or fewer machines, that's a it's a restricted location, I'm sorry. So the restricted locations get charged a different tax structure, and once they have 16 machines or more, or any table games or a race and sports book, now they move up to non-restricted. And then you get into, is it a Class 1, Class 2? And that's based upon how much money they take in gaming revenue. So most of the taverns you're seeing, whether it be up here in Carson or Reno or Las Vegas, you would see in a convenience store 7 machines usually. You would see at a laundromat maybe 4 machines. Those are all restricted locations. They can have up to 15, and that's it. Correct, yes. If I misspoke, PTs is restricted. Yes, restricted locations, 15 or fewer machines. The others are non-restricted up to the amount of money they spend, and that's a tax collecting issue. I'll give one more backup if I misspoke. Non-restricted is because they have more than 15 machines or any table games, race and sports book, those kind of things. You divide them into classes based upon their gross gaming revenue. Restricted is 15 machines or less, and that they're charged per machine, and the taxes and fees are handled that way. So any of your PT's pubs or any of your local sports bars, those kind of things are all restricted locations.
So you could be
Thank you.
non-restricted in N1.
Assemblywoman,
Okay.
you've not, thank you for that.
Thank you.
We will go to Assemblyman Gray.
Just a quick question. So as people are being evaluated for entry into the Black Book, is there any due process for them where they can appeal it before they actually get put in there? And just looking at it online, the Black Book doesn't look very big. I mean, there's only like 20 or 32 names in it.
Thank you, Assemblyman. Yes, it's not something that is taken lightly. So it takes a great degree for the state of Nevada to tell somebody that you will not be allowed in any gaming establishment. So intentionally, I think the policy always been that these should be the worst of the worst, that you can't even step foot in a gaming establishment. As far as due process and all, the due process is having a commission hearing and presenting that in front of them. And the Attorney General's office handles that, so I would need to defer to them as far as the legality, but there is a statute specifically allowing that process to happen.
If I may add, George Assad for the record, there is plenty of due process. They can also have judicial review once they go through the process through the Gaming Commission, who is the adjudicative body. After the Gaming Control Board presents the case, then they can appeal to District Court, Nevada Supreme Court, District Court, Federal, Ninth Circuit, all the way up to the Supreme Court of the United States. And just, if you may, you're too young to remember this, but people like Anthony Spilatro, Frank Lefty Rosenthal, Joey Cusimano, back in the day, they were in the Black Book, not just because of maybe one particular crime that was committed, but they brought tremendous ill repute and disgrace to the gaming industry. So it's a combination of factors. It's not just one incident involving some type of criminal activity. It's a subjective analysis, and to answer your question directly, they do have extensive due process rights.
And just so you know, one of the things that drove that.
Excuse me, Assemblyman, you've not been granted a follow-up either. No, we're going to move on. But I have a question to follow up with that. So you're saying when you're talking about appeals, that's in order to get removed from that list? Because I thought we just heard that the list was a lifetime sentence.
Thank you, Chairman Miller. No, George Assad, again, for the record. The appeal process is to get them unremoved. They go through a process with us, and they're put into the Black Book. Then they can appeal to get removed from the Black Book.
This is the clarification I'm looking for, because I thought we just heard that, because I specifically asked if the Black Book was a lifetime sentence,
It is,
unless you get removed.
correct.
So then it's not.
It's not what?
Okay, we will move on.
It's a lifetime sentence unless a higher court
Unless a higher court
overturns
removes you.
the Gaming Control Commission's decision.
Decision. Got it. Thank you. Assemblywoman Cohen.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. I don't know if you mentioned whether Chief Black was one of your chiefs in Las Vegas, but maybe if she is, she can answer this. Because I do have a question about retention and recruitment. We've heard from, I think all of us on the dais in pretty much all of our committees this week have heard from different state agencies about issues with recruitment and retention right now. Is that an issue right now, or is gaming control kind of being able to maintain your numbers and continue to recruit and keep your employees right now?
Thank you, Assemblywoman. Again, for the record, Kirk Hendrick. I think I can answer that. I've been here almost 2 weeks now, and as you said, that the committee members have heard that. I've been hearing that for the last 2 weeks as well. It's difficult in the sense that the Gaming Control Board is becoming almost a training ground, and unfortunately, if a state agency is spending the time, the energy, the resources, the financial resources to train someone, sometimes you understand that people are going to leave. Maybe they leave to the industry for higher paying jobs. What we're seeing is that we are training people in different divisions. As Member Watkins mentioned, a lot of our employees are CPAs, and then once they get their CPA certificate, they will leave. And we're losing that brain trust and that institutional history, which is very difficult. However, we're not just losing state employees that have been trained to the industry, private industry, we're losing them to city and county jobs, and amazingly enough, we're losing them to the exact same type of job in other state agencies, and that's something that I'm sure I will be back up here when we talk about the budget, that's bad, I think, for everybody. If somebody is trained by the Gaming Control Board and they leave to take another job at another state agency and they're making $10,000 or $15,000 more, that's tough for us to continue to properly regulate the industry.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Looks like we don't have any additional member questions. So with that, we thank you for your presentation, and we will close the presentation from the Gaming Control Board.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Our next presentation will be from the Nevada Department of Corrections. Excuse me, we don't approach the dais.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We don't approach the dais. Thank you. And we are happy to welcome back Director Zarenda. For those who don't know, Director Zarenda has been the director of the Department of Corrections before, and so took a little sabbatical, but is back. I think our weather had a lot to do with that. So thank you so much. I apologize, I only have your name listed, so I know that everyone else will introduce themselves that are participating and say and spell your name for the record as well. With that, whenever you are ready to proceed, we ask that you please begin.
Thank you, Chair Miller. This is James Zarenda. I'm the Director for the Nevada Department of Correction. A lot of you might have already heard, my goals and mission and the problems, the obstacles that I have that I'm going to be facing. But it's important for me to keep stressing to individuals what we're facing in the Department of Corrections throughout the next 2 years. I have our number one problem, which you heard even from taxation, is that staffing. I have been meeting with companies already. I'm trying to get the best suggestions and ideas on what we can do for recruiting, hiring, and bringing in those from even outside of our state and country to come into the Nevada to help us with our staffing crisis, not only for the Department of Correction, for other agencies of similar law enforcement or medical mental health. So when you're talking about what's the obstacles that can with the staffing, is all my goals that are going to be affected by staffing with programming. When we look at programming, evidence-based programming is something that is, you probably have heard this, but I'll say it again anyway, is it's a program that has been researched by some organization identified by the Department of Justice that is actually certified to do the program. Could be National Institute of Corrections, it could be ACA, which is a Association for Correctional Administrators, or American Corrections Association. When you do a program over a 3-year period and the purpose of the program has been met with 51% or more of the participants, that's when it becomes evidence-based. When you look at programs in the Department of Corrections, I go back and look at the data like that came from the Sentencing Policy Division when you look at who's coming into the agency. So we have coming into the agency is what? You have it's the violent crimes, the sex crimes. What's related to the violence and sex crimes, that's a subcategory of them, is substance use disorder and mental health illnesses. So when I look at evidence-based programs, I'm trying to utilize the staff and resources I have to tackle those 4 areas. So now we go and we pull in evidence-based programs like MRT, which is moral recognition therapy, DBT, dialectic behavioral therapy, anger management, and any sex offender programs that are either evidence-based, which we can't find any, or best practices. And we use those to funnel our resources to those categories because that's the majority of those that are coming into our system. Not all of them, but it's the majority. So reusing our resources to those individuals, how we do that, and so that we can get the better product when those individuals go back into our communities to keep them from re-victimizing and going after our communities. Giving them the tools is the most important thing I can do. Programming is only one piece of it. The other piece of the tools is providing those that can maintain sustainability in our communities. So what does that mean? It means that we have to come and focus our other resources on providing job opportunities, education, and not only the education, but treating them with mentors and programs that we know they're going to be utilizing in the community to make them safe. And it doesn't always mean a fiscal note. I am opening up the agency, as I mentioned before, to volunteers, to the community organizations that are begging to come in, but there's obstacles with them with coming in to work in the agencies. I want to break those obstacles. I need the community and the community organizations to be part of the success that we're going to have, and I need their help, even the families. I need more of the families that are supporting the individuals that are under our care to be part of the treatment and programs that we're doing. It's that important because those are the individuals that are going to be with those individuals when they leave the system, living with them, helping them, supporting them, and I need them part of the success as well. Like I was saying, it isn't a Department of Corrections problem to get individuals back safely and back into the communities better. It's all of ours. And I have to use those resources in the communities because there is numerous resources that the Department of Corrections has not used over the years for whatever reason, beliefs of security issues, beliefs of that it's not practical. It is practical. There is no security issues when you're dealing with trying to return those offenders back to the community with their families and with those resources. I'm breaking those obstacles. I'm bringing all those resources in, the families in, because I know that's going to be our biggest success. And even if we're looking at those that have been victimized with those that are incarcerated, I understand that, but my goal is that they do not re-victimize. So what we're doing is we're going to team up with these organizations in the community. I have numerous ones, which I can identify, that have the money and the resources to help, that want to send people in. I have ex-offenders that are good mentors that have succeeded once they've gotten out to be very successful businessmen and women. And that they have their own companies. They know how to curb the history and the continued practice of victimization. They can stop it, and they know how. They've been through it. Those are our best resources to come in to guide and mentor those that are going through the same thing so that they can be successful as well. When they become successful in the community, we're all successful because our families and our friends and our communities are safer. So there's going to be a big shift in that in the agency that everyone's going to see. There's going to be some that are not understanding why it's important or why we shouldn't, is always what I hear. Allowing more of the public, volunteers and families and ex-offenders in, but it's not what we need to do. We have to do everything we could to be able to curb that and to be able to do the right thing to get them on the right track. That's going to also help with our population numbers. When you talk about recidivism, if I can do something in our agency and we all can do something to get those more successful, our recidivism rate goes down because victimization goes down. What that does is when you look at the JFA numbers for that have been predicted for the department, those numbers are predicted to go higher. Our intake is going to be overshadowing our discharges. That means the population's numbers go up according to JFA. I need to stop that trend. I need to prove them wrong, and I need to do it with the tools that I can get, and I know what those tools are. So these are things that I know I'm going to be questioned over through a period of time, but I do know it's successful, and it's happening pretty much around the country, and I know what I can show and what I can do is going to prove JFA wrong. The other thing that is important in the agency that you're going to see a lot is increase in technology. And I'm not talking about fiscal note technology. There's things we're going to be looking at to increase technology, wireless devices, things that are being used pretty much everywhere else in the United States, except for here in the prison systems. It's another tool for me to be able to reach out to every offender, to be able to get the right programming, the education, the schooling. I could get Pell Grants that can actually funnel in secondary education, which means that I can get more offenders returning to the community with the possibilities of higher paying jobs and more successful in business. That is a goal. These wireless devices we'll see later when they come up in these other bills. But I'm just giving a quick presentation that these are things that I know are going to be making not only me successful, but all of you successful in our communities, because it's going to be something that's going to curb the violence, and it's also going to reduce our numbers coming in. The last thing I just wanted to bring up, which I've been mentioning over and over, is the infrastructure. That's going to be another task of mine. That's going to be, it's so overwhelming and so much from the care and the non-maintenance of the agencies through it's not just corrections, but our main agencies in the Department of Correction have been neglected for years and years. We've had one of our facilities right next door in Carson City that it was built in the 1960s. They're falling apart. We cannot have our public to be jeopardized by falling apart fencing, falling apart doors, falling apart windows that may affect security and safety to the staff, the offenders, and to the community. That should never happen. We have to start bringing our infrastructure back to a purpose where I know and I'm confident that it's going to be safe and secure. We have buildings, facilities that have been built. Our closest large facilities to Las Vegas are built on a side of a mountain. They did not take into the infrastructure issues with the erosion of the water coming down that is going under our fences. They're constantly eroding under our fences. We have holes, which it's hard to believe you have prisons that have holes under their fences. We do, and we patch them. We constantly, it can't happen. They weren't designed for that purpose, and there are fences that are designed for that purpose, but they were not when they were built. That's an infrastructure issue of mine that I know is going to be a safety issue that I have to tackle and try to go after these next 2 years. And we will. It's a slow process. The problem that we have also is when you talk about doors, windows, and gates, the mechanisms that use to control those do not exist anymore. The companies that were built them do not exist anymore. So it's more expensive. It's customizing to be able to replace them. Sliding doors that they have that are not even operational in a prison setting, it should never even be heard of, but they do exist. We have gates that don't have motors that don't work, that because they don't make them anymore, we have to rebuild everything. In a prison setting, that should not exist. I have multiple and many infrastructure issues that I have to address that are not going to be addressed just in 2 years, but I have to start bringing them up so that we see what we have to tackle even in the next 5 or 10 years. But my immediate concerns will be auditing those infrastructure issues, to hit with those in the most priority in our next 2 years that you'll start hearing. Anyway, it's a lot, and it's a lot to understand if you're not familiar with the prison systems. But I just want to make sure you have I hope you have the ultimate trust in me that I know what I got to do with this, and I really am doing it to make sure that all of our communities and all of us are going to be safe, and that we are going to have a successful reentry division that I'm going to be rebuilding to make sure that the offenders are successful as well. Anyway, that's all I have. If you have any questions, I'm here, or even after, it's no problem. Thank you.
Thank you. So the two individuals next year are not presenting, they're just here for support.
James Renner, for the record, they're my side support. But if they have questions that I
Sidekicks.
can't answer, they'll be here if they need to.
Got it. We appreciate that. So before we go into member questions, which as you can imagine, there's a number of member questions, could you just touch a little more about the mental health services that are provided to those that are incarcerated?
James Renner, for the record, so we have, which is kind of shameful, we do have minimum mental health care. We do crisis intervention with mental health. We do therapeutic mental health care, but we do not do enough for the mentally ill in the prison system, and I know that. We do not do enough of it in the community. I know that. We have to start focusing on our priorities with mental health. I've already been talking, like I mentioned, with these agencies that work for companies around the world, all these different, there's 72 countries that want to come in to assist in mental health care, psychiatrists, psychologists, mental health social workers. We have to build our system stronger for mental health care. We do, I mean, we're monitored even by, the courts and by activist groups in the community on what we're doing for mental health care. I know we're doing our basic needs, but we got to do more. And we got to do more and get the resources to be able to do that, which is the staffing. I do need more mental health staffing. It's very difficult in our rural areas to get psychologists. I have major facilities with no psychologists. That doesn't make sense to me, and it should never exist. So one of my goals, like I mentioned, is the staffing, but part of that is the mental health staffing, because we got to do a better job with our mentally ill.
I think, and before we go into member individual questions, and this is something I'm passionate about, and you and I have discussed plenty of times before, and it's someone who's ran a prisoner reentry program. It's, and based on what we have here in Nevada now, because it wasn't here in Nevada where I ran it, but based on what we have here in Nevada now, and based on the progress we have made in the past few sessions, but knowing where we still need to be extremely effective, because again, this is for the entire community. Can you just walk us through what it looks like for someone who's incarcerated? What are we doing while someone is incarcerated, whether it's with mental health support, substance abuse treatment, family reunification, of course, trying to prepare and connect for housing and employment and training and all those things so that this individual is prepared. And I'm saying this slowly for everyone else. I know you know what reentry programming looks like, but if you could just tell us what's happening currently, when does it begin, at which point before release, what's provided, and what's there to support and capture individuals when they leave.
James Aranda, for the record. First of all, reentry has to start at day one. No matter what your sentence is, the first time you come into the door of a correctional center, we have to map out what your needs are. We do everything based on a needs assessment. And when I talk about needs is what high levels of mental health care you need, voc ed care or training or education you need, or what type of levels of education you are. All these come into a needs score right when your first day coming in. We start to sort out what we got to do, where we got to send you, your terms of the sentence. Longer term sentences, there's certain things that we could do for the long-term offenders we know aren't getting out in the next 10 to 20 years. There's things that we focus on, especially to make sure that they're safe and that they're being productive while they are incarcerated, which is immediate mental health care, whether they're on reorders of certain psychotropic medications that they may have been on, medical histories. All of them are sorted out literally the first week that they are in. Has to happen on day one. When you start moving along your sentence, you start getting sorted out in the different institutions around the state based upon that needs. Or if things happen with disciplinary records or further possibilities of warrants or subpoenas that get issued, it does shift where your locations are going to be. However, your needs scores are the same. We shift you and we move you into institutions that specialize in that score. So if you're getting within, it comes back down to being prepared 2 years before is where we really get to reentry, to start focusing on your, making sure that you have the educational and voc ed services that were offered, so that when you get within that 6 months of going out into the community, we have the plan and everything already done or getting close to done. 6 months before is when we start before their discharges is, or parole eligibility is where we really start to focus into what we're going to be doing for the community. How we're going to connect the services that we've already have done, the things you still need, connecting it to the community so that in those 6 months, if there's something that we're missing, we connect it and we join with the community piece on that. And the way I explain it is even something as simple as the job markets. We do our training, we do our whether it's education to say what type of a job markets they may skill in. We start that at the 6 months, trying to find individuals or companies that will actually be hiring. We have a lot of companies that are working for us now that we already put them into positions before they even discharge. Working on that is one of the most key success is not only the job, but also the wraparound services. We have to know within 6 months what wraparound services you need in the community, whether it's substance use disorder wraparound services, whether it's mental health services, or whether it's housing. All these services have to come in play and be known between that 6 months and the 0 day when they're going to be discharged. So the reentry piece is really wrapping everything around the offenders, everything that we could do as a tool to make someone successful. So that's where the community pieces have to come in, and the jobs that and selling to the businesses that they have marketable people trained. We even allow the training for those companies to happen while they're here, so it doesn't cost the companies. So when they get out, we can actually turn them over on day one to a job, wraparound services, and housing. When you lack at any of those, the success rates go down. Even no matter how much training you do, no matter how much education you do, the skills you have licensed before or set up before they get out, the problem we're going to have is the housing piece. Individuals being released to the community or ending their sentence, they don't care what job they're going to have. They don't care, what services you're going to offer. They only care, where am I going to sleep tonight and where am I going to eat? That's the big thing. So it's not one thing that plays for successful reentry. It's a huge bunch of categories that we have to make sure we hit and make sure it's planned out well enough before they go home, which is 6 months. When we're not successful, it becomes devastating. You have those that are being released with nothing, and it does happen today. There's individuals that get released to certain areas in the community, dropped off at homeless shelters, dropped off at areas that they don't even know if they're welcome. We try to set it all up. There's still places that nobody has anywhere to go, which is the most devastating thing we can do when you work on someone's future and you find out they're going back in the community with nothing. So the reentry it's complicated, but it really falls on connecting those resources, making sure we have those needs correct in our system, so we work on it before even the 6 months before discharge happen, and then at 6 months to discharge is when we really have to start connecting and we need everyone's help. That's where I think it's going to be important with teaming up with the families, teaming up with volunteers, teaming up with organizations that are willing and ready to help, that in the past the agency has given an obstacle for or not allowing in. So it's going to be a new day, it's going to be a new change, and I do believe that I'm going to have the right people coming in to help, including ex-offenders that were successful, so that they can guide and help and get those successful as well. Hopefully that answered it. I know it's complicated, but thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate that, because that did provide more insight, general insight for us all. One last request before we go into member questions. If you could just give us a brief kind of description of your professional background?
I'll try to make it brief. Anyway, I was growing up in the system when I was going to college. I'm actually a biochemist and got my master's. I grew up working in a correctional system in Connecticut. I started working in a jail system as a correction officer when I was actually going to college. I was just 18 years old working as a correction officer. Got my degrees and just kept. I became passionate. I know it's hard to believe with people that think of the movies when they're talking about prisons, but I became passionate about the prison and jail systems because I knew there's a way I could make a difference. If I could change somebody's life, it made it important to me that I was able to do something because I know my families will be able to benefit for what I can do. I kept going to school while working, and I ended up taking over the prison and jail. Unified systems like Connecticut means that prisons and jails are the same thing, which is different in the state of Nevada. When I finally retired from the state of Connecticut, I was commissioner of jails and prisons and parole. So I ran all the jails, I ran all the prisons, I ran all of parole. So I really understood what it meant coming out of the community, incarcerated, what the sentences really have an impact, what parole has an impact, how that all works, and all these systems have to be on the same page, which I don't believe we are in Nevada, but we need to get to that point. When I retired from Connecticut, I ran all the jails in the 5 boroughs of New York City and Rikers Island, learning more about how the success and non-success of utilizing the community is with the systems. New York City is a different world where you have so many different contradictory missions, which is contradictory to what I know and where I want to take the agencies, is why New York City is kind of a failure today in that system. After I left there, I took a really, really brief stint in Los Angeles with the county jail systems before I ended up being asked to run the prison system as the director in Nevada back in 2016. I realized the cultures that were existing in the department back then, the contradicting cultures, the bad cultures that some do still exist today that have to be shifted. As I started, when I first started, we had no reentry teams, which I knew were the most successful for making the community safer. There was not in existence. I shifted that to try to change the cultures, to get those staff and educated on the importance of what we need to do to change the behaviors and to make people that are under our care successful and what it means to everybody. Right after the change of administration, with governor's administration, I ended up taking a position with the mayor in North Las Vegas to develop my own jail system there, which is open today. They closed the jail system there back 10 or 12 years earlier, and I developed it to a point where I wanted to have the programming, the reentry piece, even with the jail population, how you can do that, setting it up. Unfortunately, I took a job as a county sheriff in Nassau County in New York before it was actually opened. I know COVID delayed it as well. I took the job in New York knowing that it was going to be a one term. Took the job, and it just coincidentally, Nevada was my home where I wanted to come back to, and my whole family wanted to come back to, and fortunately it gave me the opportunity again to come back as director. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And with that, we are ready for member questions. So we will first begin with Assemblywoman Cohen.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for being here. I want to go back to something you discussed at the beginning of your presentation about the involvement of families. Can you go a little more into that, and especially how families are able to be involved with the lack of accessibility to several of our, well, I guess all of our, for most people, getting to our prisons is quite a distance.
So James Arenda, for the record, there's a few pieces to this. First of all, when I talk about utilizing the families and support, when you're looking at reentry, those families have to be connected to the offenders before they go home, not after they're released. We really have to open the doors to have the children come in, to spend it with their mothers, to be able to spend time, to be able to, because when you look at the children that are coming with the mothers and the fathers, they become the goal and the hope for those individuals to want to succeed because they know the impact it's going to make on the future of their kids. I think that's important, bringing the children in and for the reentry piece. The obstacle was us. There was nothing in the laws, nothing that in practices around the country that prevent you to do this except the corrections division. We need to get the families involved in those supports. Sometimes, and we understand, we have to do the right research on the families because sometimes the families are the obstacle as well, which we understand. Those individuals could be victimizing those that are incarcerated. We know that. So it's depicting the right resources, the support, and the family, because not all of them are going to be supportive. And getting them, if they're willing and we have the right track of it, bringing the families into the actual correctional facilities to be with their families is a big deal. The other piece is when you're talking about the youthful offenders. Currently in this state, we do incarcerate those that are 16 to 18 that are charged as adults are held in the Department of Corrections up in Lovelock Correctional Center. To me, that when you start looking at that, I think that's counterproductive and counter mission. Sending those individuals that are at that category of the age group from 16 to 18 the furthest away from their support and families, I think is wrong. So one of the very quickly things that I'm going to be doing within the next 30 days is relocating those youthful offenders out of Lovelock, bringing them closer to their families, bringing them closer to the resources that I have to be able to give them. Getting resources out to Lovelock for that age group is very, very, very difficult. Bringing them closer to a place like Carson City or Reno and Las Vegas, I have the resources. I think that's more important to me is bringing that age group closer to those resources and their support, because I think that's what's going to help them not only be successful when they do get out, but also to keep them on track with what we're trying to do with our mission of rehabilitating and getting them on track while they are here. So the family is a big deal, and support's going to be a big deal. The obstacles, we limited the numbers of volunteers coming in. That should never happen. You want to come in to volunteer, you're certified in something I'm looking for, whether a certified MRT counselor, you want to come into we should be letting these individuals in to help. We have groups out there that have always been trying to come in to mentor ex-offenders. We don't let ex-offenders into the system to be able to help. Makes no sense to me. That's what we do today. Those that have been successful, been through it, when I try to talk to individuals that are struggling in the prison system, that have been through really lifelong issues, obstacles, drugs, abuse, for me to be able to help them probably won't be successful. If I have not been through exactly what they've been through and got successful because of where they were and where I was, we're on two different pages. If I get a ex-offender that's been exactly through the same thing that individual's been through and now all of a sudden they're very successful, that's not only hope for them, but it's also someone that can guide them to be able to say what I did or what they did to be successful and give hope to those individuals so that they, first of all, know their life isn't over. They know that they can do something better for their life because somebody has. It's a great tool for us to be able to do the mentoring. So that's a big shift that's going to happen. And like I said, it's the corrections department that actually caused those obstacles, which we can't allow, which I'm going to be shifting. So hopefully that helps a little bit. Oh, and last thing too is I think is going to be a connection too is we're going to be, there's an RFP out right now, so I don't know what company is going to be selected, but we're also going to offer, it's not going to replace visiting, but it's going to offer video visiting with families through every institution. So if you have somebody that has been incarcerated, their mother, their fathers live in England, live in overseas, they can actually continue with video visiting, see their children from other countries right there in the housing units. It's also a whole array of stuff that I'm working on that's connected to the wireless tablets, wireless devices that I think is going to be a game changer for not only the state, but also for how I can prove JFA wrong and reducing our return recidivism. I think it's going to be a big deal, and everyone's going to be proud of the state with this. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Director. And when you mentioned that, I noticed there was quite a bit of head nodding up here, so, and in the audience as well. With that, we have some more questions, and I'm going to ask you if we could have a brief, concise responses. I know you're trying your best. We're so happy to have you here, Director. Next is Assemblywoman, and I will say, I'm sure many members up here on this dais are thinking, I could just sit and listen to him all day. All day. So, but again, we do have schedules, so if we could just tighten it up a bit. Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong.
Good morning, and thank you so much for being here. I'm going to be honest that you brought tears to my eyes because we have been struggling for 2 years to try to get somebody to listen, and this is wonderful. I'm sorry. Anyway, I represent Assembly District 6, Bonanza Road in Las Vegas, and we have people dropped off all the time. Nothing. Maybe $25, no ID, no plan. And we ask ourselves why people are coming back, because they have no plan. And on Tuesday, the Sentencing Committee had this whole list of words that people were expressing to them about why they were in recidivism, why they were going back. And all the things that you're discussing have to do with that. They had no place to go. So I'm hoping that you can talk to us briefly about what you all are doing to institute what we talked about last session, which is preparing people before they leave to have their ID. We know that they can't get housing if they don't have ID. So do you have a program that you're working on? I'm sorry. And there was an issue with people's savings. We know that they have to pay back for Marcy's Law, but there was some egregious, in my opinion, taking people's money and leaving them with nothing. And so do you have a plan on how we can make sure people are paying their restitution, but not coming out penniless so that they get caught up and end up back in the facilities? Thank you. Sorry about that, y'all.
No
Thank you.
apologies, Assemblywoman.
James Miranda for the record, yes, and I got to explain, I'm sorry, I'll do this quick. So another thing that I'm looking at allowing through the wireless device is email. If you look at Department of Motor Vehicles, if you look at around the country, if you look at vital records, try to get a birth certificate and not have an email address. You can't. With technology today, anyone that's applying for long distance for a birth certificate in the United States has to have a return email address. So how am I going to do that? So this is going to be one obstacle I think we're going to be able to overcome is allowing the email so that I can actually get birth certificates sent directly to the offender from another state. One obstacle I've already met with the Las Vegas Latin Chamber of Commerce was those that are from other countries. Other countries, and this is what we have still follow-up meetings on this, but there's certain countries that you can't get birth certificates unless you're there in person. Puerto Rico, off the top of my head, is one of them. You got Mexico. What they do is, if you're not there in person, we did get through the embassy to allow what's called CURD cards. CURD cards are almost the same as a birth certificate. So we're working on expediting CURD cards and getting them through for certain countries that don't allow us to be able to do it unless they're in person. So there is ways to do it, just we haven't done that because of these the obstacles that these other countries placed on us. That's being worked out. Hopefully will be resolved to be able to utilize that a lot easier. You also have a group of individuals that don't want to have their birth certificates or identification known. When you have that obstacle, we can't, even fingerprints don't. Here's what's scary is, and this happens in every state, when you get arrested, if you have no identification and no birth certificate, you tell them, the police officer, here's their name. My name's John Doe. You become John Doe, even though there's no proof that you're John Doe. This is common. They go to court, the police fingerprint you as John Doe. They can't find any fingerprints that match. you become John Doe. You go to court, they give you a minimus. And in the minimus, will identify you as John Doe. You get released, we release you as John Doe. You get arrested again, who are you? I'm Jimmy Doe. Okay, you're Jimmy Doe now. I take you, you have no record. However, your fingerprints now match with John Doe, but you don't become John Doe, you're still Jimmy Doe because that's what you came in on. Your minimus comes as Jimmy Doe, you go through the system, we release you as Jimmy Doe. Next time you come in with a different name. All the names we in the Department of Corrections can connect. However, there's no positive identification of who you actually are except for who you told us you were. That's common. I mean, that's in all throughout the United States. How you combat is another way of figuring out how we're going to do this. We ended up, when I was leaving here, we came up with a system to at least give some type of an identification when somebody leaves the system. We have identification cards that we issue that claims what your name is you came in on. When we verify them through birth certificate or through through the government, if it was a proven identification, we identify in there that it's verified identification. You get discharged with an ID from Department of Corrections with your photo said it's been verified. However, for those that aren't, we have a system in place to release you with an identification that's clearly listed as unidentified or unverified. The reason why that's important is because the second they get out, if they're looking for an apartment or a hotel to stay in, they cannot get one unless they have some type of identification. That was the reason why we did the verified and unverified, so that at least they had something to be able to get somewhere to stay if they were able to. So we're still working on the birth certificate piece. Wireless devices, again, are going to be a big catch because they could start the birth certificate process in the jail system before they come to the prisons. All that can be transferred over through a wireless device, and we have it so we can either continue it, sign them up for the Medicaid and all that on the devices so that they have it when they release. Big deal. The piece that you were talking about with the charges. When I first came here, I was even listening from legislation and issues from last year about the charges for medical care and the charges for programs or services. I had my staff, his division next to me, Russell, had his staff come up with 3 different suggestions, proposals that they're getting to me, and I'm hoping this will help. I'm not sure it's going to resolve everything, but it might help on the questions that you were asking about, you know, why, first of all, why are we charging for those other services? Is it a benefit? Is it something that we should it be reduced? Should it be put into trust accounts so that they do get out with something? So those proposals are coming. Unfortunately, I don't have them with me today.
Thank you, Director. Our next question is from Assemblywoman Gallant.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for spending so much time talking about the mental health and rehabilitation process. So somebody's come from mental health field for 15 years prior to my other directional change. But I've managed to meld my 2 worlds together now. So I've worked with a lot of organizations where they've received grants to provide housing for offenders that have, are coming out and who can't reunite with their family. And so here's my question for you is that I've worked with multiple organizations and we've had one that was sort of met with a lot of fraud and really just did not do anything beneficial for the client or for the landlord. And then I've worked with some others that have been fabulous. So are you looking into these different type of organizations, and then how are you also vetting them? And then, also placement makes a difference. So on properties that have a higher crime rate, there was more issues. We were able to get them into an area that was safer, then we had less issues and more success.
James Renner for the record, and you're absolutely right. When I first got here, we were teamed up with a hotels throughout Las Vegas that were actually in very bad areas that became crime centers. So here we were teaming up with these hotels, putting them in housing for 30 days, and they actually were putting them in drug dens, which was counterproductive and actually made things worse. So it is important that they're vetted, these where we're placing individuals. Right now, I've been doing extensive meeting with 3 organizations, Hope for Prisoners, Ahern Construction, and a whole bunch of things, but Ahern in Vegas, and also the Billy Walters Foundation. we've been actually teaming up so that we could come up with these answers. We have some great funding that came into them for housing, which is going to be a big deal. They're actually, Ahern will be building modular units that are going to be placed in strategic locations that are actually going to be great for the temporary housing till we get them on their feet. But I don't get the resources that they get. So like Hope for Prisoners has many, many millions of dollars of grants that I can use to be able to make these things happen. And yes, they have to be vetted, they have to be licensed, they have to be somebody that has credentials, so we're not making things matters worse. What I'm doing now is trying to expand those services that Hope for Prisoners, Ahern, and Billy Walters are doing in Vegas to bring it up to the northern part of the state, which is going to be a big deal. They're actually going to be setting me up with CDL licensed schools, both in the north, south, and the women's facility in Las Vegas, so that we can get higher paying jobs and getting them certified and getting actual CDL license while they're incarcerated. So the day they get out, they actually can start working the day one. I think there's a lot of and this is not something short that I can talk about because it's huge. And I think all these things have to start happening. And like I said, we have to stop being the obstacles for doing this. And if it doesn't work, I'll change it. But right now, if we're doing nothing, then we're failing. And you'll see these, what we're going to be teaming up with is going to be a big deal. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question from Assemblywoman Considine.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for this presentation. I want to talk a little bit more about infrastructure. We know that we have an aging population in the prisons, and we know how many of them are going to be there for the long haul. In a previous hearing, we heard that there are infrastructure problems as far as ADA compliance, and I'm seeing a nexus between the health costs, the ADA compliance, and the aging population, and I'm wondering, do you have a plan? Are you including it for the infrastructure rebuilding, aligning it that way? And if you could just briefly speak about that.
Sure. James Render for the record. Talking about ADA and the infrastructure is actually being monitored by the Department of Justice. We actually have several lawsuits against the agency that go back to 10 years ago that are monitoring and making sure that we're in full ADA compliance. Most of our facilities are not. And like you said, with our aging population, that's where the money cost is going to have to be able to be targeted, because if our population of the aging is going up and our average age group is going up, the average cost for medical goes up because of that. And also our hospice issues are actually going up. ADA has to become part of this, which they are, just the cost for it's going to be more expensive. So we're strategically placing those higher aged population to the areas that we know we can become in compliance with or already are, and the infrastructure piece has to be able to target the ADA piece of that as well. And we are.
Thank you, Director. Our next question is from Assemblywoman Hanson.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for being here. It is so wonderful to have you back. So thank you for giving us a second chance. I think what is very evident is that you don't come here with excuses, you come here with solutions. And I think that's what's been so encouraging for, not only those who are new here, but for those of us who have been following this for quite some time. So thank you again. When you mentioned the idea of bringing in former offenders, it reminds me of that model of AA. Anybody who's been traumatized by alcoholism or drug abuse in families knows that that model is so important, to have a sponsor, to have those who've overcome these hardships and challenges, to have that connection, to see that somebody can do it and can relate to them in a way that I can't, who's never struggled with alcohol. So my question, you and I talked offline when you were here a few days ago about Lovelock. It's in my district, been a tremendous crisis of staffing levels at about 45% of the prison population for staff. So you mentioned to me some very creative solutions that you're currently working on. If you feel comfortable to mention those, you did speak of the youth offenders, but if you could maybe share that with my colleagues and to those who might be listening. Thank you.
So James Render for the record. So my two most difficult facilities to staff are Ely and Lovelock. Their vacancy for staff vacancy rates are higher than 45 and 50% for both locations. Moving the youthful offenders out of Lovelock down to Carson City will actually help with the reducing of the amount of staff you actually need at the facility of Lovelock. So that's going to be a big help. The other thing we're doing is there's one of the camps called in Humboldt that has staff there. It's difficult to find even offenders to go there for the NDF fire training. We're going to shut the facility down and moving the staff over to Lovelock. Those that cannot or are too far of a distance to drive, we will be providing them access to transportation to be able to be driven there so we do not lose the staff. The offenders that are in there, I have enough room in our other camps that we can relocate those offenders to those areas so we do not lose any NDF-trained offenders that can help with the forest fires. So that will be happening very quickly. Right now, my big thing is trying to get ready for the IFC to be able to say where was all this that was open a year ago? Where are we today? What was shifted? What PCN numbers were shifted and where the money is going? So that's going to happen, well, it has to happen quick to be able to analyze it, but also the moves are going to happen fairly quick as well. Within the next 30 days, the youth will be down in Carson City and the Humboldt offenders will be out and the staff will be working at Lovelock. That's going to help with our staffing over at Lovelock. And for the very first time, and hopefully this is a trend, we have 6 officers at the training academy coming into Lovelock as well. That has never been, I know it sounds small, but it's never been that high of new recruits coming into that one facility. So with all 3 of those things happening, I think we're going to be in pretty good shape over at Lovelock. And now I got to work on how we're going to do the others in Lake Ely.
Thank you. Next question, Assemblywoman LaRue Hatch, did you? Okay, thank you. Assemblywoman Hardy?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and it's good to see you again. When my youngest daughter was a freshman at UNLV, starting in the criminal justice program, they had a wonderful guest speaker come in, who many of you might know, John Ponder with Hope for Prisoners. And she, from that visit, did a report on recidivism and shared it with me. And then I, a few years later, had the opportunity to meet John Ponder and have become a really good friend of his. And I admire so much the work that he has done with that program and has kind of sparked my interest in this whole reentry subject and recidivism and how we can work to combat that. So if you wouldn't mind just sharing with some of the members that may not know, there are other programs like Foundation for Independent Tomorrow and some of those that we have here in Nevada that I think are just fabulous. And to your point of, these are programs that help these individuals come out, before they come out, and then when they do come into the communities, get training and get jobs and get housing. And I just think they're wonderful. And if you wouldn't mind highlighting, a few of those that we currently have and maybe some, hopefully, new ones that we could bring to Nevada to assist in this reentry, because I just think it's just so amazing what they do, and I think it's key to helping these people when they come out be successful.
So James Renda for the record, and that is exactly where I'm going. There's any vetted organization, company, I'm not going to refuse help. I met with, last week, I met with members of Nevada Strong, and Nevada CLU, the Child Advocacy. I met with as many organizations as I could to see, first of all, to welcome everybody in. I need to get any of those organizations in that want to help, they got to be able to help. I'm not going to be refusing anybody. I'm not going to be holding obstacles if you're going to be able to come in to do something for me. There are many different organizations, even the rural areas, that can help. So connecting is going to be a big deal. All these, if you hear anybody talking about it, I have an open door policy with these organizations. They all know how to get a hold of me. I don't turn their calls away. I talk to them. I meet with them. I'm meeting with more next week in Las Vegas to try to expand into the other parts of the state. The thing you got to understand is we can't force these on the offender. So when you're talking about why isn't this person getting help, that one, if they refuse it, We don't force it. Neither do the organizations we are working with. It's like we're not going to force somebody into a faith-based group if they don't want to be part of that faith-based group. So we don't force it. So getting bringing it back, getting those ex-offenders in that can give them hope to say that, you got to try, you got to do this, and look what happened to me, will help encourage them to be part of part of those groups and really accept those groups to be able to help them. But there's many groups out there. It doesn't stop at 10, 12. There's literally dozens that are willing. The faith-based community has many groups out there that work with them, that are going to connect with them. And I think as long as we're accepting them all in and making sure that everybody is going to put a piece of this to help with the success is going to be a big deal. So it's going to be multiple, and we do have it. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. I don't believe I see any more questions. So with that, we thank you so much for your presentation and for always your candor and your, specific, always laying out what your plans are and the direction of your leadership for us. And I know there's probably some other members that will be interested in setting up one-on-ones with you, and we look forward to you returning in a few weeks with your bill presentation. So thank you so much for that. And with that, I will go ahead and close the agenda item on the bill presentations. We will move to our next agenda item, which is public comment. Again, asking that everyone please keep their comments to 2 minutes, and that pertains to those that are here in Carson City, as well as those who may be at Grant Sawyer, and of course on the telephone as well. I will go ahead and read the phone number right now, so if anyone is interested in calling in, they have some time to do that. The phone number is 1-669-900-6833, and today's meeting ID number is 815-369-3478. And again, this is listed in the agenda. If there's anyone here in Carson City that would like to approach. And for everyone in person and on the phones, please remember to state your name clearly and spell it as well for the record. And with that, you may begin.
Good morning, Chair, members of the committee. Tanya Brown, spelled Tonja, BROWN, advocates for the inmates and the innocent. Welcome back, Director. We applaud you. We miss this man. Anyways, I don't think he knew that he has a nickname that was given by some of the old timers.
Ms. Brown, I'm going to ask that you keep facing the microphone.
Okay,
because,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Anyways, some of the old timers had trouble pronouncing the director's name, so they gave him a nickname, Brubaker, from the old Robert Redford movie. I don't know if you're familiar with it or not, but kind of reminds me. I think I want to see it again. So the director had spoken about some of the programmings that they're looking into. Something recently came up, and I have never heard this before on any of their programmings in decades. And I don't believe that the director is maybe even aware of something. But some of the concerns that the inmates had was PTSD. Coming out of prison, some of them suffer from PTSD and there's no programming. And some who will never get out have it. And so that was something that they would like to see a part of programming, is something to help with their PTSD coming out. I'm not sure if the director is aware of some of the ongoing situations because he's been gone for a while. There are still problems with the lack of medical care. I have submitted a document this morning regarding just that issue. There was an inmate in prison who has not been receiving any of his medical prescriptions that he need to survive. And this brings me to the recent lawsuit of the settling for $497,000. In the Clifford Miller lawsuit, he was blind in one eye and had been attempting to obtain cataract surgery. I'm sorry, but okay.
Ms. Brown, but what we appreciate is that you are here regularly and you also do know how to submit additional comments as well as communicate with the director or other agencies. So we appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Barry Cole. I've been a psychiatrist here since 1986. This is a hold harmless opportunity for everyone. Bottom line is, I've been the medical director of NAMS twice, the inpatient chief of staff once, the medical director of SNAMS once, and the statewide medical program coordinator for what used to be MHMR before it became its new name. We've been trying to coordinate, because I was at NAMS as recently as 2017 with the Department of Corrections. Yes, we knew in advance when inmates were being discharged. About 1 week was when I finally knew. Now I had to scramble to find a bed and hold that bed open and then figure out how we program someone through into our outpatient system. You're aware we've closed West Hills in the north. We closed Monte Vista in the south. There aren't psychiatric services in Nevada for anyone, much less complicated people. It's getting harder and harder to find providers. And I hate to tell you this, but I'm on the faculty as an adjunct member of the Department of Psychiatry at UNR, and I'm talking to residents who are expecting to make $300,000 to $400,000 a year when they graduate, and they only want to work 28 to 32 hours a week. So how am I going to get them to relocate to Elko, to Ely, or wherever they're going to go? Because it's going to not just take a base salary, but a housing incentive, and it's also going to have a 35% state match, that is for the benefits. So I urge you to cooperate with Health and Human Services, work with organizations like the Nevada Psychiatric Association, our National American Psychiatric Association. I've worked at the Chowchilla Women's Prison in California. I assure you, I still have PTSD from that. Thanks.
Thank you. And I appreciate at the end that you did, that you did, and I just will say for a point of privilege, it's a little unorthodox for us to respond to public comment, but just for the sake of everyone that's working to record right now what you're saying, and of course, some of the members not always knowing all the acronyms in the field, so we appreciate at the end that you did start to say some of the full terms, but if members approach you after this to ask you what some of those acronyms were. Okay, thank you so much. With that, I don't see anyone else here in Carson City, nor do I see anyone in Grant Sawyer. So broadcasting, can you open the phone lines, please?
To provide public comment, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. To provide public comment, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue.
Anne Marie Grant, ANNEMARIE, GRANT. I just wanted to state that I had provided some documents that go along with my public comment that I had submitted yesterday. My brother was 38 years old when he was murdered by Reno police, hog-tied and asphyxiated to death. I just think that police reform is something that needs to continue into this legislative session. It's disingenuous to think that the state of Nevada isn't losing community members to law enforcement unjustifiably since 2021. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Next caller.
Caller, you are unmuted and you may begin.
Good morning. My name is Nicole Williams, and I COLE
WILLIAMS. I am an activist and a member of the Board of Directors with Return Strong, and I'm just calling in to give my support and very excited about the new direction that the director of the Nevada Department of Corrections is going with. So that's all for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Broadcasting, do we have anyone else on the line?
Yes, Chair. Caller, you may begin.
Good morning. My name is Jody Hawking. I'm the founder and executive director of Return Strong, and I just wanted to thank Director Zarenda. It is a huge relief, and honestly, my phone is blowing up. For anyone that knows what we do, we've been fighting the past 2 years to bring humanity into incarceration, and we continue to say repeatedly that prison didn't have to look the way that it was. But for people who are not impacted by it, either directly or indirectly, we trusted people who were in administration who were not really leading us down the right road. And we're ecstatic about the leadership that was chosen for corrections. And we believe that this will really is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of what can be accomplished by partnering both corrections that are under the leadership like Director Zarenda and partnering with community organizations and families. And so my phone has been blowing up this entire presentation with literally families that I'm almost in tears with relief that finally there's somebody who is coming into the situation that is telling the truth and really using best practices in terms of how we can turn this ship around. And so thank you, Director Zarenda, and thank you to everybody on the legislature that's been listening to us scream and yell and cry and complain for the past 2 years. We're happy that this is going this way.
Thank you. Broadcasting, do we have anyone else on the line?
Chair, the public line is open and working. However, there are no more callers at this time to participate.
Okay, thank you for that. With that, first I want to thank all the members for a fantastic week. I know that it's been a lot of presentations, but next week we will mix in presentation and bills. And then after that, it's just off and running on that bill, downhill ski slope to the finish line. Also, we have a special treat on Monday. The first two bills, as they should be, will be presented from our former chair and our speaker, Yeager. And with that also, I really hope I don't receive any arguments over this, but we will begin at 9 a.m. on Monday. Unless you have, okay. So we don't need to put it up to a vote or anything. Okay, so with that, we will see you all at 9 a.m. on Monday. Have a great weekend. This meeting is adjourned.